Goal Ayres. The United States is constantly changing and is not always for the better. Everybody here has been affected by COVID in one way or another. We've either gotten COVID or we know somebody that has gotten COVID. The United States is spiraling out of control. First, I'll talk about COVID in the US and how it compares to the rest of the world. Then I'll talk about political polarization in the United States and how it affects us. And then finally, I'll talk about school shootings in the United States and some numbers with that. First, COVID in the US and how it compares to the rest of the world. Currently, the United States leads the world in total deaths from COVID, with over 500,000 people dead from it. But the United States also has a larger population than a lot of the world. So according to Mike Hills, a journalist for the last 15 years who got a degree in journalism and international conflict from Kingston University, states in BBC News published in May of 2020 that when you set aside the population difference and make it to the 100,000, you see that actually Belgium has the highest rate of death with 82 deaths from COVID per 100,000, while the United States has 30 deaths from COVID per 100,000. But then when you look at New York, who was hit the worst, they have almost 150 deaths per 100,000 people. And this shows that there's a lot of variation in the United States from how we handled COVID, and overall we could have done a lot better job at handling it. Debates about what we should do and what we should have done for COVID happen all the time, and that is one thing that is polarizing the United States today. Which leads into the next topic, political polarization in the United States. According to George Skelton, a political columnist for the last 60 years who got a degree in journalism at San Jose State, states in LA Times in February of 2021 that there is a 87% point gap between Democrats and Republicans' approval of Joe Biden's performance within the first 10 days of his presidency. 98% of Democrats approved of him, while only 11% of Republicans approved of him. In the first 10 days of his presidency, he barely had any time to grab a cup of coffee and sit down before he was criticized for how he was doing. This shows that a lot of people don't make their opinions based on how they are actually doing. They base it on what their political party views of that person. This happened with Donald Trump, and this is going to continue to happen with Joe Biden. People hated Trump because he was a Republican and they were a Democrat. People hate Biden because he's a Democrat and they're a Republican. The presidency is not the only polarizing thing in the United States right now, though. Gun laws is a huge thing, especially with school shootings. School shootings was a trend leading up to the pandemic in 2020. Thankfully, that stopped. I guess there's a pandemic as well, but it stopped. And according to Leslie Maxwell, a managing editor that graduated from the University of Missouri in California with a master's and a bachelor's degree, she states in Education Weekly, published in March of 2021, that there have been 59 school shootings since 2018, and 10 of those 59 shootings happened in 2020 before the pandemic hit. So the pandemic hit about March, about this time last year, and so 10 school shootings happened in 2.5 months. Imagine if COVID hadn't happened, imagine what that could have looked like for the remaining 9.5 months. Thankfully, we don't know. I don't think we'd want to know. Recently, school shootings have become more of a reoccurring thing now in 2021. As the latest school shooting that has happened in March 1st, where a 15-year-old in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, shot and killed 2 people in his class. Debates about what should happen with gun laws continue to happen, and especially about what we could do to stop school shootings, but nobody truly knows what we should do. First, I talked about COVID in the United States and how it compares to the rest of the world. Then I talked about political polarization and how it affects us. And then finally, I talked about school shootings in the United States and some numbers that went with that. The United States is spiraling out of control. Before the United States can move forward as a country, we need to change something before it is too late.
424, great job. Thank you. 1, 2, 3.